So still on workflow and the GitHub user interface. Uh, in the last video, right, we talked about simple workflows for a one-man team or a small group of people. And then we started talking about workflows that may work for um, uh, organizations, right, or repositories maintained by many people, right? So, and we were talking about the develop branch, right? We'll still continue talking about things related to the develop branch. So, in the previous video, we stopped at this point where we took note of the main branch being the default branch. Now, I'm going to say this that the first time, how do you know that a branch is the default branch, right? This button that carries the branch name, if you click on it, in the drop down, you will see default, the default badge, right? By the right of the branch that is the default branch. So in this case, the main branch is the default branch. So which means that you can't delete this branch, right? And by default, GitHub makes main the default branch or master. As in case you don't see main and you see master, they are the same thing. Now I'm going to go out of this GitHub training and then come back into it. So you can see that whenever, should I say whenever, let me say every first time, yes. So whenever I go out of the GitHub training repository and I come back, the first branch that will greet me is the default branch, which is main in this case. Now I want to show you another repository, which is the GitHub training resource repository. Now anytime the first time or any other time that I go back into the repository, when I click on it, you can see that the main branch is developed. How do I know? That's because the first time or every first time the develop branch greets me, right? And then you can see that in the drop down, when I click on that button that carries the name of a branch, you can see that the default badge is on develop this time around. That's because in this case, the repository maintainer, which is me, right? I decided that I don't want my default branch to be main, so I changed it to develop. That's because I want it to be clear that for this repository, right, uh, you should deal with the develop branch. But because, well, people are not so, some people may not be used to this workflow, right? And they may not necessarily read all the things that are on your README. You should always do that. Read the README, read the documentation, right? But in the case where someone does not read the documentation or read the README, but says, "Oh, I want to contribute to this um, to this repository." So remember, I said that as from this point onward, you should have direct dealings with the develop branch, right? You should not, you should no more deal with the main branch. Just everything you want to do, create a new branch from develop. When you're also sending a pull request, you send a pull request to develop branch. Yeah, so you don't have any dealings with main branch again. So I'm just going to show you something, right? Now we are entering into uh, common practices, best practices, right? So if I try to fork this repository, or in fact, let me hold on. Let me go back to GitHub training first. to do this. So if I act as if I want to fork this repository, for example, right? Remember this on the create a new fork page. Remember this this checkbox area where you have the text, copy the main branch only. You can see that in the case of the GitHub training repo, right, the main branch is the default branch. That's why it is written here that if you want to copy the main branch only, that you want to copy the default branch only, right? In the case of the training resource, if you act as if you want to fork the repo and it takes you to the create a new fork page, you will see here it's asking you copy the develop branch only. That's because the develop branch is the default branch in this case. Now, there's something I want to talk about when you are creating a new fork, right? When you are creating a new fork on the GitHub user interface. Now, for a repository that the main branch is the default branch, right? If you leave this checked, it means that it will copy only the main branch, and you don't want that. We already established, right, that Git and GitHub training has a develop branch, and we said once you see a develop branch among the branches, you know that that organization is one of the way you know that the organization wants you to deal with the develop branch when you are submitting changes, not the main branch. So if you let me go back to so if you leave this main branch, if you leave it, if you leave this copy the main branch only, if you leave it checked and you create your fork, you will only have main branch. But we don't want to start creating, you don't want to start creating a develop branch from the main branch when the original repo has a develop branch. That's because the main branch may not be an exact copy of the develop branch, or the develop branch may not be an exact copy of the main branch. So you want to get the exact copy of the develop branch, right, that repository has. So in this case, you want to uncheck this box and say you don't want to only copy the main branch only. So when you create the fork, right, in your own fork, just the way I have it here, right, you would see that you have the develop branch among the list of branches that you have, right? Yeah, and it's not just develop branch, like every branch that the original repository have, you will also have them. So but in the case where the develop branch, like this training resource now, where the develop branch is the default branch, right? If you click on the fork button to fork the repo, it's actually easier. So in this case, if you copy the develop branch only, well, it is not bad, right? But you could still, just to have a copy of all the other branches also, you could uncheck this so that you could also have main branch and any other branch. So that's that about or when you want to actually fork a repo, right, and the develop branch, right? So I would have addressed the pull request part in this video, but this video would get so long. So let's talk about the pull requests, the advantage of having the develop branch as default, right, when someone submits a pull request.